Hello everyone, welcome to another video of GeekBud. In today's video I will be going over another very important equation in chemistry or stoichiometry that you'll often use is C equals N divided by V, which is essentially concentration equals moles divided by volume. Okay, so let's go over what the units are and what each of these letters represent. So C equals concentration. And the unit for concentration is mole per liter minus 1. N is mole, and the unit for mole is mol, so just taking off the E. Volume, V for volume, and the unit for volume is in liters, but note that in most chemistry questions you're often always going to get the volume in milliliters. I know it's a hassle, it is confusing as to why they would give it to us in milliliters, but obviously if you're considering the laboratory environment, it'll just be much easier to measure in milliliters with the equipment that we have, and obviously it just makes sense that way. But in that case, even in test paper questions or exams, you'll in that case obviously get milliliters as well, so you have to convert milliliters to liters, and the way to do that is to obviously just divide milliliters divided by 1,000. So for instance, 5 mils to liters is 5 mil divided by 1,000, and that should give you liters. Great, so now that we've covered what each of those letters mean and the units for each of those values, let's go over an example together, and then we can go over an example where you can answer the question yourself, and hopefully you'll get the answer. So here we have a question where we have N equals 0.25 moles and our volume is 25 milliliters. So if it's easier for you, I would figure out how to convert milliliters to liters if that is easier, or else you can just do it all together in the calculator. But for the sake of it, why don't we just convert it first? So essentially that is 25 mils divided by 1,000, and if you just plug that into the calculator, you should get 0.025, and your units is liters. Okay, so this question, comparison to other stoichiometric question that we covered in another video, N equals mass divided by molar mass, is a little bit easier. It's not so confusing, and the tip is just you're probably going to have to remember this equation by heart, because most often than not, your teachers or professors will not provide this equation for you in an exam. Okay. So now that we've basically calculated, converted milliliters to liters, we can then now just plug into the values that we have into this equation. So C of sodium hydroxide, which was the values this was for, is N divided by volume. N is 0.25 mole. Here we have that here. And then volume is 25 mils. And essentially, if it's easier for you, you can go ahead and plug this all in the calculator, and you should get an answer of 10 moles per liter minus 1, which is your concentration. Okay, so if that is difficult for you, like having to plug it all together, I would obviously suggest you converting milliliters to liters, which is 0.025 liters, and then just again doing the first step, and the second step just plugging that into the equation and then dividing that by moles, and you should get 10 moles per liter. Great. So now let's do one where you can answer the question for yourself. Here we're trying to calculate concentration, and they have given you in the question the mole and the volume. So yeah, you can pause the video and try to do this yourself, and then come back to it, and we'll go over it together. So essentially, concentration we know equals N divided by volume, so moles divided by volume. If I plug this into the equation, what they've given us, it should be 0.0625 mole divided by 20 mils. And how I like to do it, I just convert it in the calculator once you kind of start practicing, this will become easier for you just to convert it in the calculator instead of doing it in 2 different steps. 20 mils divided by 1,000 in brackets, of course, and then we plug that into the calculator, and you should get 3.125. 3.125. Or we could just leave it 13. And the unit for that is mole per liter. Great. Okay, so hopefully you got that answer correctly, and you are kind of grasping what this equation is and how to use it. But obviously it doesn't stop there, because you can obviously get a bit more, it can get trickier where you have to rearrange these equations in chemistry and then determine the other values as well. So you're not always going to get a question where you're trying to find concentration. You can get one where you're trying to find moles or volume. So in that case, let's do the second question where we're trying to figure out moles. So in the case where we have a concentration of a particular solution, which is 5.25 mole per liter, and we have a volume of 15 milliliters. Okay, so let's just convert milliliters to liters now, and that should equal to 0.015 liters. Okay, and that's just dividing by 1,000. So how do we do this? We use this equation, but we rearrange to find moles. And hopefully you can do this yourself. So pause the video and try to do this yourself. N equals so N should equal, so mole should equal to C multiplied by volume. So concentration multiplied by volume. And if we plug in these numbers, we should get 5.25 mole per liter, and then multiply that by volume, which is 0.015 liters. And if we plug in the calculator, what do we get? We get 0.07875. 0.07875, and the unit for that is mole, because we're trying to figure out N, so that's mole. And then obviously, depending on your teacher professor, how many significant figures you should round it to, I would just go 0.079 mole. Okay, and I'd like to do one more with you where you're trying to figure out the volume. Okay, so again, essentially the same thing, just it's all about rearranging what you have. So in this case, we're trying to figure out volume, and if you were to rearrange this equation, C equals N divided by V, volume would equal to N divided by concentration, so C. They've given us moles and concentration, which is great, so all we need to do is rearrange the equation and then plug in the numbers. So that would equal to volume equals to 0.0452, which is your mole, divided by 13.40 mole per liter. Okay, so if you plug that into the calculator, you should get an answer of 3.37 xp minus 3, which just essentially means that depending on what kind of calculator you have, you might get this answer, or you might get 0.00337. So hopefully you have noticed by now is that you're getting a really small number. That means, because obviously if we go back to our So you probably realize this is quite a small number, and if we go back to our notes, we know that the volume, the unit of volume should be in liters. So obviously you'll get a small number because of this. So in this case, obviously the unit for this value is liters, so the volume is in liters. However, if in an exam situation they are asking you to maybe determine the volume in milliliters, then obviously we would need to then multiply um, this value by 1,000, and that should give you the answer that you're looking for, which is 3.37 milliliters. Okay, so that's obviously up to the question that they've asked you, whether they want the final answer in liters or milliliters, but often they are seeking the answer in liters. Great, so that was it for today. Hopefully you understood this equation. If you have any questions at all regarding this equation, please do comment below. I would love to help out, and good luck.